Hi guys, I'm Daniel Flexen here for the latest edition of SecondsOut ReFLEXions. We're here every Monday at 4:30 PM to talk about the boxing action of the weekend just gone. And this week, to no one's surprise, I'm sure I'll be focusing on Daniel Dubois against Joe Joyce. I think my colleague Joe Lee has produced a review of the Mike Tyson-Roy Jones exhibition fight for people that are interested in that. And looking at the pay-per-view pre-buys, it looks like quite a lot of people are interested in that. It's not really my thing, so I'm going to talk about Dubois-Joyce, which I did find really, really interesting. Not the most exciting fight, it certainly wasn't a war, but just so much to kind of unpack from that contest of previously unbeaten heavyweights. Obviously, one of them, Dubois, is no longer unbeaten, as Joe Joyce got a 10th round stoppage. So let's talk about Joyce first of all and what he did well, because a lot of the focus post-fight has been centred on Dubois and the way in which the fight ended, and I will talk about that. But let's start with Joyce, as I think it's right, as he pulled off what's the biggest win so far in his professional career. And I suppose we shouldn't be too surprised. The bookies had Dubois a big favourite, but Joyce, it always seems to be a 50-50 fight to people within the trade and ex-boxers and pundits and so on. A lot of people that I interviewed over the last couple of weeks were picking Joyce as well, so fair play to them. You'll see an interview in sometime this week with Lerone Richards, where we both gave our Joyce Dubois predictions, knowing that they wouldn't be, ready to view until after the fight had happened. So we were quite brave in doing so, and only one of us was right, and let's just say it wasn't me. So well done, Lerone, on that. But yeah, Joyce, his game plan was perfect. A lot was made, including by me, prior to the fight about Ismail Salas not being in the corner after failing his test for COVID-19. He was obviously, or not obviously, but we presume, was the one who implemented the game plan, instructed Joe in it, but then wasn't there to kind of maintain it and to let him know where he was going wrong on the night. But Steve Broughton was in the corner, along with Jimmy Tibbs, obviously wise old head there, and the other guys. And Broughton kept him focused, told him what to do. Joe clearly listened to him as well. You know, he was focused on every word that Broughton was saying to him in the corner. That came across to me very clearly on BT. And carried out the game plan to perfection. Started off on the front foot. Busy jab. You know, lots made in the past of Dubois' jab, how forceful it is, how good it is. But Joyce out-jabbed him. And once he took Dubois' jab away, the fight was pretty much in the bag, I thought. Also, the thing that I really admired about Joyce was how he put pressure on with his feet. So he wasn't expending loads of energy. He wasn't throwing loads and loads of shots like everyone assumes with Joe Joyce. He's a volume puncher. He pumped that jab out regularly, but he wasn't throwing loads and loads of follow-up shots. He didn't get greedy, but he put a lot of pressure on with his feet. He cut the ring off well, forced Dubois to throw when he wasn't really in a position to throw accurately, countered well. And also forced Dubois to fight at a pace that not only was he not comfortable with, but that he hadn't really experienced previously over a long-distance fight. It was a real step up in class for Dubois. We knew that going in. But I think the fact that he hadn't had that challenge before stepping up to someone at Joe Joyce's class really showed on the night. From the moment he was being forced back, which is something we hadn't seen before, he seemed incredibly uncomfortable and dispirited, both in the ring and in the intervals in the corner. So Joyce did those things very, very well. Never got greedy, as I said, and took some big shots as well. You know, Joe Joyce, there's been queries about his chin because of stuff that's happened in his amateur days and WSB, and also being hurt by a body shot by Bryant Jennings. But Dubois never seemed to really hurt Joyce. Caught him with some flush shots as well with that big right hand. But Joyce, he tucked up well. He moved his head sometimes as well, but most importantly, he rode the shots well, kind of turned his head a fraction just as the shot would land to take the sting out of it. That was very impressive. And just little tricks he held when he needed to as well, not because he was buzzed, but because, you know, to take the steam out of Dubois, to take away his impetus and his urgency and dispirit him even further. Just those little tricks that you learn over a long amateur career in the WSB as well, Olympic silver medalist, and just he old-manned him a lot of the time. He outworked him, outboxed him, and old-manned him. And for me, I know judges had Dubois, was it 5 points ahead, 2 points ahead, and losing on the third card, something like that. Might not be exactly right, but I think the 5 point margin, which was originally misreported as 8, drew a lot of criticism, and rightly so. I had Joyce in a comfortable lead before the stoppage in the 10th round. I thought he was landing the more telling shots and also more shots. You know, he was certainly busier in the vast majority of rounds. I didn't think Dubois was particularly in the fight by the time it ended, but I'm happy to concede my views in the minority. I think a lot of people on social media and people I've spoken to had it very close before the end. I didn't, but it doesn't matter. And then yeah, the ending when it came was a surprise, certainly to me. So Joyce hit Dubois with a stiff jab right on his injured eye. We haven't actually spoken about the eye yet. So Dubois' eye, because of it was his lead eye, his front eye, his left eye, because of Joyce's regular use and busy use of the jab, his eye had swollen up gradually from the opening bell really, and then by this point it was almost closed. And Joyce hit him with another stiff jab. I don't know how many that was in total, but a lot. And hit him right on the eye. You can see Dubois kind of step back and then to the side, wince, dab his eye with his glove, and then take a knee. Now, to me, at the time, watching it in real time, it just seemed like he was stunned. He needed to gather himself. He wasn't hurt, but the pain was there in his eye. He couldn't see hardly at all out of it anymore. Vision compromised, and he just needed to kind of get away from that pain temporarily, take the count, and then I assumed he would get back up, and come back into the fight to an extent. And I thought maybe the corner would, seeing what had happened, would maybe pull him out at the end of the 10th round. But then he kind of looked at the referee as he was tolling his count, staring him in the eyes, his one eye obviously, for as long as the count was going on. And you just got the impression once it got to 6 or 7, you could tell he wasn't going to get up. And this led to the biggest debate since the fight, and unfortunately it's taken away a little bit from Joyce's great victory, and we'll talk about what's next for him in a minute. But yeah, Dubois, a lot's been made of it. Did Dubois quit being the main focus of the debate? A lot of ex-fighters have slated him for it, and then some other ex-fighters have slated fans for slating Dubois for it because they've never been in the ring and maybe don't have the same rights to criticise a fighter for that reason. So first of all, did he quit? And quit's not a great word anyway, but did he decide discretion was the better part of valour and save himself for another day? The main thing I have the problem with, that I've seen a lot of takes about this on social media, is that Dubois stopped because he was fearing for his long-term eyesight and he wanted to live to fight another day. That's just simply not true, because those things don't go through your mind in a matter of seconds when you're in the middle of a testing situation. He decided not to go on, that much is certain, but it wasn't because he had this grand plan about what was going to happen in the future and what was wrong with his eye and how he was going to come back from it. And it just doesn't work like that. You're in a moment of fear and panic and heightened emotions. You're down on the floor, the referee's counting, you've got a very abbreviated time frame in which to make that decision. It's an impulse, it's an instinct. You decide, I'm going to continue, I'm not going to continue. And in that moment, he decided not to continue. I'm not sure I see that as quitting necessarily, though. In that moment, he decided perhaps that he wasn't going to win the fight. Is that quitting? Not necessarily. I mean, I don't see there's that much honour in going out on your shield if you know you're definitely going to lose either way. I'm not saying he thought he was going to get up and get absolutely pulverised by Joe Joyce and get carried out. He might have, stumbled his way half blind to a decision defeat, and as it turned out, that would have been a close run thing anyway, although it shouldn't have been. But I think you just decide the pain's too much, and we later found out he had a fractured orbital bone and nerve damage to the eye, so serious injury, very, very painful. I think it was just, this is really hurting. The fight's not going my way. I'm not going to win. I'm going to stay down. And I think that's as much as you can process in those moments. I don't think there's any long-term thinking really involved. Because if there was any long-term thinking involved, then Dubois would have thought about the permutations of what he was doing, the criticism he would receive, the fact that this would stay with him as his most memorable moment of his professional career until he produces a more positive moment to supplant it. And he might have carried on the fight. But you don't go through all those things. And that's why all these ex-fighters saying, oh, I'd never take a knee. When you're there, you can't jack it or you can't swallow. you're not thinking about that. You're not thinking about shame or honor or valor. You know, and fighters should know this better than anyone. When you get tagged and you go down, it is an instinct. And if they're saying, well, maybe Dubois just hasn't got that instinct to carry on under adversity, maybe they're right. I don't know. But you can't change that. You can't change who you are. It's not a matter of bravery or fear. It's just you're down, you're in pain, and in a split second, it's not even a decision really. In a split second, you have that reaction, and then it's either to get up or it's to stay down, depending on how painful it is and what's going through your mind at the time. And it all, you're having to make that decision so quickly with the eyes of the world on you, and you're already tired as well. You know, 10th round of a fight where it's not really gone your way. You've taken a lot of shots. It's just so hard to empathise with Dubois' position. And even the ex-fighters who are saying, you know, fans can't really empathise because they've never been in there, and etc., etc. Not all adversity is the same. You know, you might have got up off the canvas, you might have come back in a fight you were getting pounded in, but that's not the same as having a broken orbital bone and nerve damage to your eye. It's a very specific injury and a very painful injury, and unless you've done exactly what Dubois has done, I think it's hard to criticise him. I think, you know, Kell Brook wants to come out and say something about it. I'd listen to him because he's had both orbital bones broken, both eyes, against Triple G and then against Errol Spence. He knows what that pain's like. He knows how badly your vision's compromised. And he'll know from the reaction to it how long it took to kind of get over it mentally and emotionally. So maybe his view on it would be worth listening to. But for everyone else out there, unless you've been exactly in that same position, maybe just don't comment. Or maybe comment privately if you've got some words of encouragement for Daniel Dubois, perhaps. Like Matthew Macklin said something in criticism of Dubois, and someone replied to him and said, why not just go off Twitter, speak to him privately and give him some advice? And Macklin's response, which I kind of understood, was you can't advise someone to kind of get up in that situation. You can advise them tactically and technically, but that's an instinct. It's either in you or it's not, which I understand. But the original point from the person who responded to Matt is that you don't need to say these things publicly because it becomes a bit of a pile-on in this social media generation, social media era, where people just like to jump on a bandwagon, whether it's criticism or positivity. And Dubois is 23 years old. You know, he will want to come back from this. He's only had ups, really, in his career so far until this. And I really feel for him today. You know, it's going to be hard for him to get over the manner of the defeat as much as the defeat itself. And if he's going to do that, all these people kind of coming out of the woodwork criticising him certainly not going to help. So, yeah, I feel for him. But back to Joyce. Great victory for him. He was magnanimous in the aftermath, I should say, as well. Gave credit to Dubois. Said he can come again. Wasn't overly critical of the way the fight ended. Just the class we've come to expect from a man like Joe Joyce. And I think he gives a lot of the heavyweights out there at a higher level, or supposedly higher level, a hard fight. You know, he's a volume puncher. He's awkward. He's clever in his own way. And yeah, he's not the fastest, but he's not overly predictable either. People said that a lot in the build-up. You know what you're going to get from Joe Joyce. Well, I don't think he produced exactly what we thought we were going to get. I didn't see anyone saying, yeah, he's going to out-jab Dubois in the build-up. So, or he's going to win the fight completely on the front foot. I thought it was very similar tactically to the way Tyson Fury beat Deontay Wilder in the second fight. Remaining on the front foot, crowding the space for a puncher, using feints and footwork to force him to throw when he wasn't comfortable, moving out when he needed to, and just keeping that pressure on, but subtly and not emptying the tank. I thought it was a very astute performance from Joe Joyce, and I think he's got that versatility now. We've seen it, and I think they're talking about him fighting Usyk if Anthony Joshua gives up the WBO belt, because presumably Joyce will take Dubois' number 2 position with the WBO. Usyk's mandatory in number 1. And he called out Usyk in the post-fight interview as well. But I don't see that as being a good style match for Joe. I think, you know, Usyk's small and mobile and can match Joe's work rate. And I think that'll be a difficult fight for him. But someone like, and it may sound crazy to say this will be an easier fight for Joe, but style-wise, I think Anthony Joshua would be more amenable to Joe's style than Usyk would. So if he keeps hold of that belt and Joe can somehow get the shot, I mean, Usyk maybe would fight Joshua and then Joe would have to wait until the next mandatory is called. But they can keep him busy in the meantime. You know, he could fight someone like a Derek Chisora, for example, who can always be resurrected and would be a good style match for Joe. But someone like Joshua, I think Joe has obviously sparred him over many years when they were both on GB, know each other well. But Joe, as a volume puncher and someone who can ride shots and take Joshua's power, at least in small doses, I think would give him a really, really hard night. I think he'd be in his face. I think he's tall as well, Joe, very big guy. He can match jabs with Joshua. And Joshua would have to fight very similar to how he fought in the Andy Ruiz rematch, in that he'd have to get on his back foot, circle the ring, fight when he needed to, and use that athleticism and those fresh legs and try and outbox Joe, because he wouldn't be kind of keeping him off constantly, I don't think. So I think that'd be a really intriguing fight. And Joe and his team would probably see it now, you know, as he's grown and grown as a pro, as a potentially winnable fight as well. It's not like Joshua hasn't shown flaws. But I'd keep him away from Usyk, because I think that's probably the worst style out there. Someone like Usyk or Tyson Fury, who's a bigger, you know, much bigger, heavier, stronger version of Usyk. I wouldn't want him, Joe Joyce, going up against him either. But those two aside, you know, I'd put him against pretty much anyone. But I think style-wise, next up maybe someone like Chisora. People might see that as a step down from Dubois. You know, it's arguable. But I'd like to see him against someone like that to keep busy, and then ultimately build towards a shot at Joshua. Why not? But we shall see. But let's remember, Joyce was the one who won the fight. He won it with a very good performance. Let's not focus just on Daniel Dubois and the way the fight ended. And I've given my take on that. But obviously, I want to hear what you guys think. Let us know in the comments below who you'd like to see Joyce fight next, how you scored the fight up until it ended, and what you made of the way in which it ended, and Dubois' actions. I'll be back on Thursday for ReFLEXions, looking ahead to 3 shows. The Billy Joe Saunders Martin Murray topped Matchroom card on Friday. The highly anticipated Anthony Yard Lyndon Arthur showdown on Saturday night on BT. And then in the US, the Fox fight between Danny Garcia challenging Errol Spence. First fight Spence has had since that horrific car crash. Lou DiBella's done a deep dive on that fight, which you can watch on the channel right now. But that'll be the 3 shows I'll be focusing on Thursday. And then I'll be back for the next ReFLEXions next Monday at 4:30 PM. Really appreciate your time, as always, and I will see you all soon. Cheers.